This time, I didn't have to travel as far. The book simply came in the mail. What's your favorite number? Again, written in that same feminine hand. I'd be lying if I said a day didn't go by where she didn't invade my thoughts at one moment or another. Since the train, I'd kept a close watch over my shoulder. Maybe I'd run into her or catch sight of her somewhere in a crowd. So far, I'd only seen her in a dream. Another book, another test, and now she wanted to know my favorite number. This time it was just a litter of sci-fi stories nestled under an unsettling cover riddled with symbolism. Not reality, but what you hoped was far-fetched fantasy. At least it wouldn't be a bad read. Philip K. Dick had earned a reputation for his startling and paranoid visions of a future where humans were something less than human. Though the title was thought-provoking, if it hadn't been sent by her, I would have just considered catching the classic sci-fi flick instead. Weird, since the date in the future setting of the film was only 2 years away now. Deep down, I knew somewhere along the line I'd asked one too many questions. I brought this upon myself. I felt obliged to make some grand sweeping statement about hovering over the precipice of understanding, right before falling off a cliff and tumbling down the rabbit hole. But even my thoughts seemed forced, like stock dialogue. Finally, I found a quiet place to read. Looks like I begin at the beginning.
You set your pen field too weak. I'll reset it and you'll be awake and...
Keep your hands off my settings. I don't want to be awake.
If you set the surge up high enough, you'll be glad you're awake. That's the whole point.
If you dial for greater venom, then I'll dial the same. I'll dial the maximum, and you'll see a fight that makes every argument we've had up until now seem like nothing. Dial and see. Just try me.
I'll dial what's on my schedule for today, darling. If I dial by schedule, will you agree to also...
My schedule for today lists a 6-hour self-accusatory depression.
What? Why did you schedule that? I didn't even know you could set it for that.
At that moment, when I had the TV sound off, I was in a 382 mood. I had just dialed it. So although I heard the emptiness intellectually, I didn't feel it. My first reaction consisted of being grateful that we could afford a Pinfield mood organ. But then I read how unhealthy it was, sensing the absence of life, not just in this building but everywhere, and not reacting, do you see? I guess you don't. But that used to be considered a sign of mental illness. They called it absence of appropriate effect. So I left the TV sound off and I sat down in my mood organ and I experimented. And I finally found a setting for despair.
I only made it a few pages before I realized how utterly insane we all were, and that clinging to sanity was making us more hollow every day. Before putting on his detective coat, Deckard had to wake up and deal with the messy business of being a human first. He had a wife and bills and domestic stresses just like anyone else. But in the future, people dealt with being human by dialing away their problems with manufactured emotions, programming their brain so that any natural human feelings that might inconveniently creep up were simply done away with before they could begin. A world of thalamic suppressants and cerebral cortex stimulants. A 104 for a professional business-like attitude, or a 481 for the awareness of the manifold possibilities open to us in the future, or a 888 for the desire to watch TV no matter what's on it. So many counterfeit unrealities. For all those people who just wanted to skip past the hard parts of humanity straight to the mindless bliss in a life only required to be an inch deep. So-called happiness was just a push button away. The kicker is that these people didn't feel victimized by those fake feelings and false moods and convictions. Deckard's wife actually felt like they were the fortunate ones. Her husband could afford the luxury of living the programmed good life. The numbers my yet unknown contact had written me on the note corresponded with the settings of the Penfield mood organ. But just what in the hell was a Penfield mood organ anyway? As it turns out, it wasn't just a random made-up sci-fi plot device.
Is the mind merely a function of the brain, or is it a separate but closely related element? In the past 50 years, we have come to recognize that in the brain there is an amazing automatic sensory and motor computer that utilizes the conditioned reflexes, and there is a highest brain mechanism that is closely related to what men have long referred to as consciousness, or the mind, or spirit.
At first glance, neurologist Wilder Penfield, for whom the device in Philip K. Dick's story was named, was something of a national treasure in Canada for his pioneering work with epilepsy patients. But when brass came to tacks, the man was cracking open people's skulls like nuts and tinkering around with what made people tick. The black box, the brain.
When the Montreal Neurological Institute opened its doors in 1934, we had available at last facilities for studying the human brain. I had learned to operate on epileptic patients, and the patient, who remained awake and alert through long operations, did guide the surgeon's hand. A stimulating electrode could be used to map out the cortex as the patient described his sensations and thoughts. The brain itself is not sensitive and cannot give rise to pain. Even a low electric current could spark instantaneous memory flashbacks. Patient DF could hear instruments playing a melody. I re-stimulated the same point 30 times, trying to mislead her, and dictated each response to a stenographer. Each time I re-stimulated, she heard the melody again. Patient MM, a young woman of 26, had minor attacks that began with a sense of familiarity, followed by a sense of fear, and then by a little dream of some previous experience. I explored the cerebral cortex with an electrode, placing numbered squares of paper on the surface of the brain to show the position each time. At point 2, she felt a tingling in the left thumb. At point 3, tingling in the left side of the tongue. At 7, there was movement of the tongue. The succeeding responses from the temporal lobe were psychical instead of sensory or motor. They were electrical activations of the sequential record of consciousness, a record that had been laid down during the patient's earlier experience.
I feel a funny tingling sensation in my head.
Electrode 1, 5 millivolts, 5 seconds.
You know, it tastes like a ham sandwich. I don't particularly like ham sandwiches.
Electrode 2, 5 millivolts, 5 seconds.
I don't know why that's so fun.
Electrode 4, 5 millivolts, 5 seconds.
Can I have some ice cream? Please, Mother.
Your mother isn't here. Do you feel anything?
You know, I never told you, but I'm just very attracted to you. Are you allowed to date patients?
Electrode 13, Electrode 14, Electrode 24, Electrode 33, 5 millivolts, 5 seconds. Electrode 37, 10 millivolts, 5 seconds. How do you feel now? What about now? What about now? What about now? How do you feel now? Now, now. What about now? Now, 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 now. Wake up!
How much time had passed? It felt like mere minutes, but apparently I had been out for hours. I didn't like where this was going, but I felt compelled to follow the white rabbit anyway. This Penfield guy not only discovered where memories were stored, but how they could be electronically accessed, seemingly about as easy as a DVD menu. Behaviors and emotions accessed on demand. Man as a machine. But were our mechanics really so easily explained and exploited? What was Philip K. Dick, and by extension, my mystery contact, trying to say? Push-button programming, just like a computer? Was it that simple? Is that where we were headed? Dial 121 for a cheerful and whimsical disposition. Dial 348 for easily amused. Dial 473 for contemplative, or 469 for ennui. Was it really possible? It would certainly be suggested by a disturbingly large number of U.S. patents filed by military branches, defense contractors, and employees of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. Patent 5,356,368, dated October 18, 1994. Method of and apparatus for inducing desired states of consciousness. Patent 5,782,874, dated July 21, 1998. Method and apparatus for manipulating nervous systems. Patent 5,899,922, dated May 4, 1999. Manipulation of nervous system by electric fields. Patent 6,017,302, dated January 25, 2000. Subliminal acoustic manipulation of nervous systems. Patent 6,238,333B1, dated May 29, 2001. Remote magnetic manipulation of nervous systems over a distance of several hundred meters. You get the idea. Man as a mere machine, maybe we were already there. These days, society at even the most basic level was being programmed to run on social media like buttons, jumping at trigger words, and fitting whole thoughts about a subject into 140 characters or less. Worse, some days I could swear everyone was angry, everyone was chipper, everyone was ambivalent. Man is a machine. I guess I never really thought of it that way. But apparently somebody had, at least 80 years ago, and lots of other somebodies followed in his footsteps. The research compounded on itself, taking on new and macabre dimensions during the Cold War and the CIA's unethical MKUltra mind control program. Fast forward. Today, there were biofeedback meditation headbands that measured EEGs on cell phones, and wearables delivering low-energy neuroscientist-designed waveforms at the push of a button, inducing sleep or jolting us awake and alert. There were even smart wristbands that could shock away our bad habits, Pavlov style, the free will to override your free will.
When I have caused a conscious patient to move his hand by applying an electrode to the motor cortex of one hemisphere, I have often asked him about it. Invariably, his response was, "I didn't do that, you did." When I caused him to vocalize, he said, "I didn't make that sound. You pulled it out of me."
In the book, you dialed a 3 on the mood organ to stimulate your cerebral cortex into wanting to dial. Man as a machine. I wonder what Philip K. Dick would say now if he were still alive. But how far had they gone? How long until we were walking around, dialing up a wonderful reality just to escape this one? And one more thing. If we weren't pushing the buttons, then who was?
You can make your family's life much brighter. You will find your work much lighter. It's as easy as can be to live better electrically. You can have more time for fun and pleasure. Family moments you will treasure. It's an opportunity to live better electrically.
Catch sight of her somewhere in a crowd. So far, I'd only seen her in a dream. Another book, another test, and now she wanted to know my favorite number. This time it was just a litter of sci-fi stories nestled under an unsettling cover riddled with symbolism. Not reality. What's your favorite number? Again written in that same feminine hand. I'd be lying if I said a day didn't go by where she didn't invade my thoughts at one moment or another. Since the train, I'd kept a close watch over my shoulder. Maybe I'd run into her. This time, I didn't have to travel as far. The book simply came in the mail.